Buckingham Palace has declined a fresh request to return the remains of an Ethiopian prince buried at Windsor Castle in the 19th century. He was the son of one of the country's most prominent rulers, but was orphaned at the age of 7 following the death of his parents. The prince was then captured and shipped to London, along with what became known as the largest haul of artefacts looted by Britain in the country's history. Here's our Ethiopia correspondent, Kalkadan Yabatel.
This is Alemayehu, an Ethiopian prince taken to Europe in the 19th century by British soldiers after his father's army was crushed. His life was short and tragic, forced to live in an alien culture far removed from his own. But he had the favors of Queen Victoria, and when he died, he was buried in Windsor Castle. More than 150 years later, his relatives are on a mission to bring his remains back to his country.
I feel sad for him. He was separated from his mother, his father, and his country at once. His mother died soon, and he was left alone. I feel for him as if I knew him. He was disjointed from Ethiopia, from Africa, and he remained there as if he had no home.
Alemayehu's story begins here in the remote highland mountains of northern Ethiopia, the stronghold of his father, Emperor Theodros II. He was an ambitious but equally brutal man who waged several wars against his rivals to be crowned Emperor of Abyssinia. His reign lasted for 13 violent years until he fought the British on a mission to free Europeans he had arrested.
These ancient castles once hosted powerful emperors. In the 19th century, they witnessed the years of Theodros II, who committed suicide upon facing defeat by the British. They survived the test of time and they remain standing here. But not so many treasured items that were stolen after the battle.
This is when Alemayehu, just 7 years old at the time, was seized. Now, Alemayehu's family are putting their hopes on the newly coronated King Charles for the return of the prince's remains.
We want his remains back as a family and as Ethiopians, because that is not the country he was born in. The fact that he was buried there is meaningless, and it was not right.
In a statement to the BBC, Buckingham Palace said,
"It is very unlikely that it would be possible to exhume the remains without disturbing the resting place of a substantial number of others in the vicinity. Conscious of the responsibility to preserve the dignity of the departed, it is therefore, with regret, not possible to agree to the request."
Here's another one. The issue of Alemayehu's remains is being raised in the context of growing movements calling for the return of hundreds of artifacts and manuscripts looted during the expedition. And many in Africa are seeing restitutions of treasures as one way for Europe to face its colonial past. Reburials are traditionally common in Ethiopia. Emperor Theodros was buried again in his home village a long time after his death. And the family of the prince, who died longing for his country, hope he will one day have the same fate. Kalkidan Ibeltal, BBC News, Gondar.